Salut à tous et d'abord merci pour tous vos retours concernant le premier épisode. Aujourd'hui on se retrouve à Memphis pour aborder un nouveau thème, un thème essentiel ici, puisque dans cet épisode 2 on va parler de Martin Luther King, dont les hommages à sa personne et à son combat sont nombreux un peu partout en ville. Et pour commencer, direction tout de suite le célèbre Lorraine Motel, transformé depuis 1991 en National Civil Rights Museum, un immense musée dédié à la mémoire de MLK et du combat qu'il a mené tout au long de sa vie pour les droits des Afro-Américains. Impossible de visiter Memphis sans s'arrêter ici, c'est un moment incontournable. Et si l'intérieur du musée a été aménagé, l'extérieur est lui resté intact avec cette porte 306, ses voitures d'époque et ce tristement célèbre balcon où le révérend King fut assassiné en 1968. Ce musée retrace donc l'histoire de la ségrégation en Amérique, à commencer par les heures les plus sombres, avec l'esclavagisme, le Ku Klux Klan et les meurtres gratuits. Place ensuite à la révolte des Noirs américains, incarnée notamment par Rosa Parks, afro-américaine célèbre pour avoir refusé de céder sa place dans le bus à un blanc, à une époque où les Noirs avaient pour obligation de s'installer à l'arrière. Pour ce geste, elle a été arrêtée, jugée, et le musée propose une reconstitution de cette scène.
If you don't move out of that seat, I'll have you arrested. Get up from there.
In 1955, if you had not moved by this point, you would be arrested.
On poursuit ensuite avec les différents moments de la vie de MLK, comme son emprisonnement ou son discours le plus connu de 1963, I Have a Dream.
This is freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Vient enfin le moment des manifestations. En 1968, les éboueurs majoritairement noirs se mettent en grève à Memphis avec le fameux slogan I am a man, et Martin Luther King décide de venir sur place pour les soutenir. On ne le sait pas encore, mais il prononce alors ce qui restera comme son ultime discours.
I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Le lendemain, 4 avril 1968, Martin Luther King est tragiquement assassiné sur ce balcon par un tireur posté à une fenêtre du bâtiment d'en face. Le King, qui séjournait alors au Lorraine Motel dans ses chambres avec ses proches, disparaît à l'âge de 39 ans. La première partie du musée s'achève à cet endroit très fort en émotion, mais la visite ne s'arrête pas là, elle se poursuit dans le bâtiment d'en face qui est dédié à son héritage et à tous ceux qui ont œuvré pour la paix. Ils sont représentés notamment sur cette très grande mosaïque. C'est un bâtiment qui est également symbolique puisque c'est d'ici même, de cette pièce et de cette fenêtre, que le tireur James Earl Ray s'était installé pour assassiner MLK. Par cette fenêtre, il avait une vue idéale sur le balcon de la chambre 306. Il atteint mortellement Martin Luther King avant de prendre la fuite. Il sera retrouvé 2 mois plus tard et condamné à 99 ans de prison. La visite s'achève alors, c'est une visite qui est vraiment incontournable, surtout à l'époque actuelle qui rappelle que ce combat n'est malheureusement toujours pas terminé. Mais maintenant, on se retrouve au FedEx Forum où dans l'épisode 1, on avait laissé les joueurs à l'échauffement. Aujourd'hui, c'est le 3e lundi de janvier et c'est donc le MLK Day, un jour qui est férié aux États-Unis et un jour qui est particulier en NBA, surtout à Memphis, comme nous le racontent J.B. Bickerstaff, Mike Conley et Marc Gasol.
Yeah, I mean, to be a part of this celebration is an honor. I think all of us need to think about that and take it as such. This isn't something that should be dealt with lightly. There's a huge responsibility that goes along with celebrating this day. You look at the reason why two of you could sit next to one another, stand next to one another, and ask these questions. To me, right, is because of the sacrifice that Dr. Martin Luther King ultimately paid. And you go out there in the arena and you see people from all different places, all different colors, high-fiving one another for one common goal. You go in the locker room, you see the makeup of the locker room, guys from different countries, and the reason why they're all able to do that and we're all able to do what we do is because of his greatness and the sacrifice that he made.
It means a lot. It means a lot, you know. I've been in the city my whole career, and you know, being in Indiana growing up, I didn't understand as much as I probably should have what Dr. King meant and his impression on the world today. So to be able to play on his day is an honor, especially in this city, where you know the Iron Man, the sanitation workers, the strike, everything that was going on at that time was right here, you know, where we stand, and that's powerful, and it's an honor to suit up and be able to play and just honor him, because I wouldn't be able to do it. A lot of these guys wouldn't be able to do it had he not, you know, took that stand so many years back.
Before the game, I was really frustrated because it was not getting better, and I even talked to Peter a little bit, and I was pretty down. But you know, thankfully, the adrenaline and things got me, you know, hyped up, and seeing the fans out there, and you know how much this game means to the city. I'm just like, just live it all, just give it all you have, and if it's not enough, it's not enough. It's, you know, you can only do so much.
On retourne au terrain où les joueurs sont prêts et le match va bientôt commencer. Un match dure 4 quarts-temps de 12 minutes, donc 48 minutes, mais en NBA c'est bien plus que ça. C'est un véritable show de près de 3 heures avec animation et jeu pendant les temps morts, et qui commence comme toujours par le Star Spangled Banner, l'hymne américain.
For the land of the free and the home of
On enchaîne ensuite avec la présentation des équipes. Je vous laisse quelques secondes en immersion dans la salle pour voir ça de l'intérieur. Le match peut alors commencer. MLKD oblige, le match est diffusé en antenne nationale aux États-Unis et les Grizzlies affrontent les Pelicans. Tout commence bien pour Memphis avec de la défense, de la transition et JaMychal Green qui sanctionne à 3 points. Jaren Jackson Jr., qui est alors un rookie, est un peu l'attraction de la soirée. Et si les shoots commencent à ne plus rentrer, Marc Gasol est là pour récupérer les ballons et se battre sous le cercle. Malheureusement, comme souvent cette saison, la machine s'enraye en troisième quart-temps. New Orleans se met à dérouler, avec Nikola Mirotic d'abord de loin, puis Mirotic encore à la passe, et Memphis va lourdement s'incliner 85-105. Pour finir cet épisode, retour en coulisses où j'ai pu obtenir 2 interviews exclusives avec d'abord Mike Wallace.
And thank you, first of all, thank you for what you do over there with Twitter, Grizz France.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Grizz France. Yes. So I'm glad that we have a following over there. That's always great to have international fans. So
Thank
that's
you.
a good thing.
It's a pleasure for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell me about what your job is every day, what you do in a game day like this?
Yes. My job is I'm Michael Wallace, senior editor, analyst, and contributor to our pregame radio and TV broadcast for the Grizzlies. Basically, my everyday role is to do media, interview the players before and after the games, write stories for our website, do radio shows, interviews, videos leading up to the game, promoting the game, and all those kind of things. So basically, just being a multimedia journalist covering the team.
Okay. You've been in Miami, I think, previously?
Yes.
What's the difference between doing your job in Miami with the Heat and LeBron James and here in Memphis?
First and foremost, probably about 60 degrees in temperature, right?
Yeah.
So once you adjust from the climate, in Miami it's always 85 degrees, it's always sunny. You're around sand and water, so it's hard to sort of get away from that. But essentially, from my duties, they're exactly the same as when I was with ESPN. The thing that I do here, my job was molded after the position that I had with ESPN covering LeBron James. Instead of doing it for a major international company like ESPN, I'm doing it on a team-specific basis. So the players are. I'm around them every day. Now what's different is I travel with the team. I'm on the team plane. I'm on the team bus. I'm at the team hotel. So I have a more intimate relationship with them, and I know when they're having good moods and good games, and when they're struggling and those kind of things too. So with ESPN in Miami, I was part of like the paparazzi. I was a little bit distant from them. Even though I was around them every day, I was still a little bit distant. Here, I'm a lot closer to the team and the franchise and the organization.
Okay. When the off-day games, when you no games, what's what you do different?
Yeah, off day, I usually try to plan for the next game. I look at the schedule, and for instance, if a game is coming up against a team that the Grizzlies played well against, I go back and look at the game that they played the previous time, find out who played well and what worked. When it's not a game, I'll cover a practice. I'll talk to the players about injuries, how they're feeling. I'll do a lot of prep work to preview the next game, more so than anything. And it's just trying to give fans something to look forward to when they want to watch it, or when they want to either watch it or listen to it on the radio or any of those things.
Pete Pranica m'a ensuite accueilli au bord du terrain, à son poste de commentateur, pour nous parler de son job, de la ville et des Grizzlies.
Can you describe a game day like this, what you do before?
Okay. Well, basically on a game day, what I'm doing is I'm compiling statistics for both teams, making all my notes for each team, and the statistics that I use, I try to create that I can explain to fans the identity of what type of style each team is going to play. And I spend pretty much the entire day putting all my notes together. I've got notes on index cards that I will refer to during the course of the game. And then also I have these charts with statistics and notes. And these are the materials that I will refer to throughout the course of the broadcast.
Okay. How many time you do for preparing this type of things?
We do it for every game, and probably spend at least 6 hours for every game.
It's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work. Then too, the public relations staffs come up with game notes.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of statistical websites that I use. I use this. And just knowing the league as well as I do, you kind of know where to look for certain things.
You do home games, but you also do away games.
We do all the games.
So, is it not difficult to have a rhythm like an NBA player and to follow the rhythm of the season?
The biggest thing is when you're traveling so much is to maintain your rest and to have kind of a schedule, which is hard to do because our travel comes at odd hours. But you just figure out a routine that works for you, that you get your rest, that you eat properly. Even though you're not playing the game, rest and diet are important. And you just figure out a way to do it that works for you.
How you become the broadcaster of the Grizzlies?
I actually, my high school had a radio station. So when I was 16, 17 years old, I was already doing games on radio. I eventually went to a school here, University of Notre Dame, and one of their graduates is the voice of the Detroit Pistons. And so he introduced me to his boss, and I started doing some fill-in work, and just went from one team to another. And I've been doing, this is my 26th year in the NBA and 15th here in Memphis.
Other than that, what you do, I saw on Twitter that you went to Asia.
Yes. Yes. Well, the NBA asked me to go to Japan because games are shown all over the world, and they were going to expand the number of games shown in Japan, but they wanted Japanese commentary. There are very few Japanese commentators that know the NBA, and so the NBA asked me to go and to meet with these commentators that knew baseball or knew soccer, but might not know the NBA, and to spend 2 days teaching them about the NBA, about rules, about who the important players are, and what are the important storylines that they should be following.
Okay, good. Can you talk about the Grizzlies right now? This season, it's not a good season for them.
It's been a struggle. I think what a lot of people forget is that this roster had significant turnover from last year to this. Shelvin Mack is new. Garrett Temple is new. Justin Holiday came over in the middle of the season. Andrew Harrison, who played a lot of minutes for us last year, isn't with the team anymore. So it's been really hard to integrate everybody. The Grizzlies also wanted to focus more on defense, which is good in theory, but teams are shooting so many threes and making so many threes that it's been very, very hard for the Grizzlies to win games because they're very good defensively, but offensively it's been a struggle.
How do you see the future of this team? Because there's a lot of uncertainty with Gasol, Conley on the rumors trade. How do you see?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, Mark and Mike, they may get traded, they may not get traded, because it depends on what other teams may want. And also Mike and Mark have very large salaries, so that a team that would want to take them on probably is going to be a contending team, but then that contending team would have to give up multiple players in trade. I think that the front office has to sit down and decide, okay, what is our plan? We're not likely to make the playoffs this year. What do we want to set as a plan that maybe 2 years, 3 years from now, we can be back in the playoffs?
Can you talk about what the Grizzlies' grit and grind culture represents to the city, to the team?
Memphis is very much a blue-collar town. You know, people work really, really hard. It's not about being fancy. It's not about being flashy. It's about just plain old hard work. And so the grit, the grind, the working hard really matches what Memphis is all about. And so I think the fans really appreciate that the basketball team is built to reflect the city's character.
Can we finish with a few words for the Grizzlies fan base in France?
Okay. So for everybody who is watching and seeing this in France, I've been to your beautiful country. I hope to come back, and we appreciate the fact that you are fans of the Grizzlies, even though we're separated by the Atlantic Ocean. And we hope that you will continue to follow us on Twitter and follow us any way you can. We appreciate your support.
Voilà pour cet épisode 2, j'espère que ça vous a plu. On se retrouve très vite dans les rues de Beale Street pour l'épisode 3. C'est tout pour aujourd'hui, et comme le dirait Pete Pranica,
Hammer, nail, coffin, this baby is over.